There is a story, more fable or legend than history, perhaps, that the originator of the Stations of the Cross was Mary, Jesus' mother. And while certainly this is fable, the history of this practice, this devotional practice that we all shared this evening, does date back quite far to the 5th century, probably in Jerusalem, for pilgrims who came to Jerusalem and were called to follow the journey of Jesus from Pilate to the cross along the Via Dolorosa, the sorrowful way. It most certainly does not date back to Jesus's mother. But I know for me, at least, I want that to be true. I want Jesus's mother to have created this practice because I think I want in some way for her to have done something with her grief. It comforts me to imagine her on the other side of her grief, constructing this monument, this practice that we all share with her now. I know for me, at least, and maybe for some of you, that is a natural desire. That when we sit in a place like we are now, at the foot of the cross, at the foot of a pandemic, in grief and loss and suffering and death, I want to move past it. I want to rush past it. I want to make meaning out of it. I want to do something with it. I want to write a great novel or a symphony. I want to create a monument to it. I want to do anything I can to not feel it. But on this Good Friday, as we look at Mary and Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene and the beloved disciple who stand at the foot of the cross this day, Good Friday, as Jesus was crucified and lay dying on the cross, I believe we are called to stand, to stay with Mary, wife of Clopas, with Mary Magdalene and the beloved disciple, to keep our eyes open and our hearts soft, to keep our gaze fixed on the death and the loss and the grief that surrounds us, and to sit in it, just sit in it for a while. And this is hard. I think it takes courage. And not the kind of courage that we're used to seeing in the movies. That kind of courage usually involves a man with a gun running into some situation or battle that is against the odds that he will ever end up out the other side, but somehow he does emerge victorious. That is one kind of courage. And there's another kind of courage that we see in this pandemic that I see borne witness to, the kind of courage of those who tend to the sick and the dying, the doctors and nurses, the hospital staff, the chaplains, those who tend and take care of us as we shelter in place, grocery store workers and delivery folks, restaurants who are trying to keep their businesses open, those people who are out in the world in the pandemic taking care of us, trying to keep this world going. And that is a kind of courage, a very beautiful kind of courage. But I think most of us are called to a different kind of courage, a kind of staying courage, a kind of courage that calls us to keep our eyes fixed and our hearts soft on the death and the loss and the grief in the world, and to bear witness to it and to not look away. My friend Mary told me a story that after her son Owen died, she received a card. Well, she received a lot of cards, but she received a card from one of her former priests. And this Roman Catholic priest had reached out to her. And as Mary told me this story, I leaned in closer because I was very interested to hear what this priest had to say, part because I wanted to know where she was, and part, to be honest, because I wanted to sort of catalog in my mind, well, maybe I can learn something from this experienced priest and what he tells her in this time of great sorrow and grief and loss. And Mary told me she opened the card from this Roman Catholic priest, and she said that it said, "Dear Mary, I'm very, very sorry about Owen's death. This is going to be really, really hard." That was it. No ifs, no buts, no ands, no so's. Just, this is going to be really, really hard. And I think sometimes that is all there is to say. This is going to be really, really hard. This is really, really hard, my friends. But as we come together this Good Friday, as we look upon Mary, Jesus' mother, at the foot of the cross, gazing up at her son as he suffers and dies, it's good to remember that she is not alone. She has her friends with her, just as we do. We are not alone. Even if we are alone in our houses, we are not alone. We are still a community. We are still connected. And Jesus is there too. Even from the cross, Jesus is loving her, loving all of them, and creating community even from the cross. The gospel writer of the Gospel of John tells us that even as he is dying on the cross, Jesus looks down and sees his mother and the beloved disciple at the foot of the cross and says to them, "Mother, woman, here is your son." And to the beloved disciple says, "Son, here is your mother." And from that day forward, the beloved disciple brought Jesus' mother into her home. And while our version of the Bible translates this word as home, it can also be understood that the beloved disciple brought Jesus' mother into himself, into his heart, into his very being. Even from the cross, Jesus is doing this for us, my friends, just as he did it for those who gathered at the foot of the cross that day. Be of good courage. This is hard. This is really, really hard. But we are not alone. We have each other. And Jesus is here, loving us, even to the end.